Now, with any big success, there are, in a way of speaking, there's always a huge price to pay, and the most noticeable price that was paid was in casualties, especially. And if we look at D-Day alone, it's hard to. There aren't really total casualty numbers out there because it's hard to pinpoint. We think they're higher than previously thought, but again, it's hard to pinpoint down exactly who died. I mean, it's such a huge thing. It was massive, and casualties for reference mean killed, wounded, missing in action, any of that. And so, looking at specifically the Allies' losses with death, we have you see there's 4,413 people died of the Allies on D-Day alone, and with a large portion of those being Americans, and this has been verified. And this is a lot higher than traditionally been thought of Allied deaths, but through identifying bodies and such, this has been determined. And the German casualties are between 4,000 and 9,000, which is kind of a vague number, which is interesting. That I find that it's hard to pinpoint stuff down. I guess that's understandable. And specifically, material losses for the Allies, we have 24 warships lost, 35 merchant ships sunk, and then 120 vessels damaged. And if you think about that, I think 24 warships. I mean, think of a warship and how much that would cost. It's a huge thing. All the materials it costs and everything. This is huge. Losing all those. And then 127 aircrafts lost, the Allies. And now the casualties for the whole Battle of Normandy, and now for everybody, all types of casualties, upwards of 425,000. And then you look at that and you say, okay, that's a high number. It's war, and but to put it in perspective of how much that really is this is the total number of casualties is more than the population of St. Louis, Missouri, and the population of Springfield, Illinois combined. So, I mean, if you think of those cities and try to imagine that, that's a lot of people. And if you also think about it, is that a lot of the wounded probably died later on because from their wounds, but actually the death rate, as you can see at the bottom, were significantly lower due to medical advances like penicillin. But still, I mean, wounds, could ruin your life. They could, like paralyze and different things. So, but the Allies specifically, out of that number, had 209,000 casualties, which a big percentage of those were also deaths. And the Germans had about 200,000, which is a very rough total again. But yeah, and also additionally, on top of that, you have prisoners of war. The Allies captured like 200,000 of them, which is a lot of people. That's like as many as that were of German casualties. I mean, that's a lot. And also, this is one thing I found very interesting, is French civilian deaths ranged from 15,000 to 20,000, and then we're talking actual deaths, and this was resulted in because of the Allied bombings, and that's a pretty high number of civilians, and to put that in perspective, that is, if we're saying going with the higher numbers, that is a little about the population of Waterloo and Columbia combined. So if you can imagine that many people, civilians, dying because of this, that's pretty massive. It's kind of hard to think about.